Welcome back to the Cannes Film Festival 2023 Parallel Challenge here on Fantasy Film Ball. We are your hosts, Matt and Arnaud.
That means we are watching an equivalent film to all 21 competition titles at Cannes this year. So in this video, we will be doing Birth and The Zone of Interest by Jonathan Glazer.
As you know if you watch this channel, The Zone of Interest is one of my most anticipated films of the year, and I believe that it can be a major Oscar player. So despite being one of the most renowned filmmakers currently working, Glazer has actually only made 4 films to this point, including Zone of Interest. So he's primarily worked in commercials and theater outside of his film work, which is why he doesn't make films prolifically. His first film, Sexy Beast, premiered at TIFF and landed Ben Kingsley an Oscar nomination. Should have been a win. And he also made Under the Skin in 2013, which is one of the most acclaimed films of the 2010s. And with The Zone of Interest, he is back. Now, he has never been at the Cannes Film Festival before, which is really interesting why we're seeing The Zone of Interest here. Potentially, we might see it win some major prizes. So we chose Birth, which is his 2004 film starring Nicole Kidman. This was the film that we chose because it's the only film of his very limited filmography that neither of us have seen.
Well, it's the first Jonathan Glazer film I'm seeing, so this is I will say a really strong first impression.
Have you not seen Under the
Yes,
Skin?
I have not seen.
Oh my god!
Nope. The film opens on 2 or 3 beautiful tracking shots of just a man jogging in Central Park, only for him to die of a heart attack 5 minutes in. What an opening. It's really, really striking with that music too. Wow, that music, that score is absolutely a standout for the film. Anne has been recovering from the death of her husband, the one we just saw on screen, for 10 years now, and is just getting past it when a 10-year-old boy claims that he is the reincarnation of her husband. And he knows a lot of details, so it seems more and more plausible that this is for real and that this isn't some sick prank. Is this kid for real? Is this really the reincarnation of her husband? Is she still bound to him?
There's definitely some lines that this film may cross at times. A lot of the hatred that this film got upon release, it got very mixed reviews. And I think that's just because of a few scenes where the film maybe didn't hold back as much as it should have. Nicole Kidman even says that this is one of her favorite films that she's ever worked on, and she thinks it's gotten a lot of unnecessary flack for the bathtub scene, which is definitely the scene that this film deserves to get flack for. Honestly, I think it is a very, very strong film that maybe people didn't give enough credit because it's a topic that is very uncomfortable to approach, but I think that makes it interesting. And Jonathan Glazer is a filmmaker that I think revels in those uncomfortable discussions.
It's a very interesting high concept, but when you actually explore it as deeply as you would hope for, it does actually end up going into that kind of taboo or provocative aspect of, wait, this is a child we're talking about. How does this work if we are to make this work, I really love that Glazer is a filmmaker. This is what I'm getting from my first Glazer film, is that this is clearly a pretty significant package of a film, right? You got Nicole Kidman, you got other name actors. It's in New York City. It's clearly a big sell, but he's not scared of really just showing us things and keeping his camera on certain things, keeping it still, putting confidence in his framing and in really letting us read faces, read emotions. There's a confidence in his directing that we see so little of. The screenplay here, co-written by Jean-Claude Carrière, the writer of such films as Belle de Jour, is really, really well conceived. Takes this high concept, like I said, and really just returns it to a film about grief and duty and marriage and all these this very layered script that is really, really fascinating.
I think it's asking some really interesting questions about reincarnation as well, and the implications of reincarnation. If we really do have a soulmate and our souls do pass from body to body, then what would happen if the soul that you are bound to? What would happen if that soul is completely unsuitable to actually be a mate? The implications of that are really disturbing. So it's asking questions that people don't want to hear. But the film is beautifully made. It's beautifully shot. The score is just so lush. And Glazer's films really revel in simplicity. You can describe it in one line, and the plot never strays too far from that setup. That's what he does in all of his films. Under the Skin, Scarlett Johansson is an alien that eats people. That's what the film is. Sexy Beast, it's about a bank robber who does not want to do a heist, so the guy comes and tries to convince him to do one last job. It doesn't go too far from that setup. Birth really stays small and simple, which allows us to understand Kidman's loneliness, her feelings, her longing for her life to have turned out differently than it actually did.
And maybe Zone of Interest is the same way, where we can explain it in one sentence. From what I understand, this is based on a book, and this book seems to talk about a love story taking place around concentration camps. I mean, you've talked about this film extensively, so I might be repeating myself, but I mean, we'll see if this is a loose adaptation or not, but based on the information that we have from the film, this really does seem to be a film about love and lust in complete ambivalence of some of the greatest horrors that mankind has ever created. I think regardless of good or bad, people will be talking about this.
I've actually been reading the book that this is based on. What I've gathered at this point is that it seems like Glazer is going really far off in the adaptation. It's only loosely based on the book, but the book is really a story about perspective, really showing the frivolous trivialities of the lives of very evil people. What I've heard from the film, it's less of a love story and more about a couple, the camp commandant and his wife, and they're gardeners. They're doing these things in the camp, but what's really important to them is their garden, which kind of shows, again, that triviality of their life. How can you live an ordinary life and have hobbies and passions when you're also responsible for some of the greatest atrocities that mankind has ever seen? I think that this is going to win the Palme d'Or. I'm just going to say it right now. I think The Zone of Interest is going to be one of the biggest movies of the year. If it doesn't win the Palme d'Or, I think it'll win either the Grand Prix or it'll win Best Director. I can't see this film going home without an award of some kind. It seems to be incredibly provocative. Also, we know that the Cannes Selection Committee, this is the only film that they approved unanimously to be in competition.
I have to agree with you based on the information we have at the moment. Shortly after this video, you'll see how the reactions are and whether or not we'll look like imbeciles or not. But I also have this as my palm at the moment. One thing I am keeping in mind, despite my confidence in this film, is that Glazer hasn't won any major festival prizes yet. That is despite Birth and Under the Skin premiering in competition at Venice. I'm assuming The Zone of Interest is going to be a major step up for him and a major film this year, and not just kind of a niche art house film like Birth and Under the Skin were. So I am anticipating this to take home a prize, whether that's director or Grand Prix or the Palme. I think it will go home with a prize. And especially with this jury, we have a very cinephile jury, one that I think is bound to appreciate this a lot more and bound not to fall into the traps of giving another prize to a recognized auteur that they just haven't seen any films from, like The Dardennes or Koreeda or something like that.
I really like that we're releasing these videos right before the actual opinion on the film is about to come out, because this will serve as an interesting little time capsule of, like, what if this film truly is just a massive train wreck and it's just a piece of shit? We'll know very soon. I think we're both very hopeful, and if we're right, we're right, and if we're wrong, this will be very funny to look back at, even in just a couple of hours' time. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us today for the Cannes Parallel Challenge. Make sure you subscribe so you can stay tuned with all of our Cannes Film Festival updates. We are going to be putting out so many videos, just an avalanche of videos this week during Cannes. So make sure you follow along so that you can find out what our Palme d'Or is going to be. Thank you so much for watching.